And today we're interviewing candidates for Mayor of Boynton Beach. This is a 4-person race on the March 11th ballot, citywide, nonpartisan. And with us today are 2 of the candidates, McQuire and Rebecca Shelton. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The 2 other candidates whose names will appear on the March 11th ballot, Golen Gordon and David Merker, were invited to participate, but declined. Ms. Gordon cited a scheduling conflict, and we haven't heard from David Merker. I will say for the record, the Sun Sentinel does consider participation in both our questionnaire and this interview as a relevant factor in deciding who to endorse in a race. I think the first thing every candidate has to do is to be a good listener and to reach out to people who are interested in what they're thinking and what they would do if elected. So thank you very much for both being here. Looks like voters in Boynton Beach are going to have a clear choice in this race, as they will have in another city commission race. We'll just start alphabetically. I'm going to ask Court McQuire the first question. Court, it was on our questionnaire. We asked for a sort of an assessment of how Dan Duggar is doing as city manager. You were not very complimentary, as our voters and folks will see online when we post the questionnaire, but I'd ask you to summarize your thoughts about Dan Duggar's record as city manager and whether it's time for Boynton to look for a new city manager.
Well, first I'll start off by saying I'm definitely going to work with him and give him the opportunity to get to know him, to get to know his business style, and not jump to any quick conclusions. But what I can tell you is I've been getting out there. I've met with multiple HOAs, groups that I have spoken in front of, various organizations, and that question is like paramount. I can't believe everyone is asking that question. The community members, when I'm knocking on doors, are concerned of some particular issues. I know you mentioned one in your questionnaire about sort of the confrontation with somebody out there in the public. But I mean, what I think my focus would be more with my concerns is sort of the spending. There's been a large amount of spending over the course of the last 2.5 years, and we need to be budget and fiscally responsible and transparent completely within our budget. Fees are increasing citywide. I go to all the commission meetings. Seniors are very frustrated with recreational fees, pickleball fees, of course, typical things like tax and insurance. But basically, there is a lot of issues with the budget. So I want to basically create a budget advisory committee of community members with some financial experience. I want them to take a look at our budget and look to make a benchmark of a cut of around 10% annually. And this will give me sort of the broad shoulders to present it to Daniel and his team and staff, and look to find ways to save money. So we have more money to go around for members of our community. As for like that particular incident, I mean, I realize politics can get heated, and that would not be a lightning rod issue for me to think, oh, we need to get a new guy. But it is concerning. The civility of the dais is a bit toxic. I mean, there's a lot of animosity, and they're not quite getting along. And I think what I'm going to bring is running advertising agencies for almost 30 years. I work with all kinds of people, and I think that my temperament and my ability to get people coalesced around a mission and kind of like go into the red zone to score, I think is going to be ideal. And I'm comfortable with working with just about anybody.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question to something you said. Are you proposing an annual across-the-board 10% cut in the city's budget?
I'm proposing that I'd like to create this advisory budget board that has a benchmark to show me and members of staff and the dais where they think cuts would be most relevant and useful, because there is a lot of wasteful spending. Take-home cars has been coming to light with me. A lot of, he's been on record as saying he gave all staff, FD and PD, a 10 to 20% raise across the board over the past 2 years. I certainly support our FD and PD, but sometimes you got to look, when they're awarded, and not always throw money around so loosely. So there's all kinds of usages for money. Like I said, parks and recreation, if you look at our parks, there are like a lot of passive parks in the community, not a lot of engagement parks. I'd like to find money to engage our community more, our seniors, our families, etc.
Okay. And one other quick point. You said in your questionnaire that there was an ordinance proposed in Boynton Beach that would in effect expand the discretionary powers of the city manager to spend city money, when your opinion was this should be reserved for the mayor. The mayor should have this sort of authority. Do I have that right, pretty much?
Yeah, you do. So basically, it's a certain amount. It was put into the agenda to allow the signatory ability to almost go exclusively to the city manager. And I think that basically takes out of the game the mayor and the commissioner's input. And, there's a question of checks and balances. That's what this government, our government's based on. And that's a perfect example. That needs to be brought before the commission, so it's in the public record, and the dialogue from the community and from members of the commission can kind of wade through all of these budgetary issues and find out what's best for the community. I don't want to put that all on the manager's desk. In fact, I think the manager has a lot on his desk. That would just be more for him to take on.
Okay. Let's turn to Rebecca Shelton. And Rebecca, I want to ask you to begin by giving us your assessment of Daniel Duggar's performance as city manager. And I'm also interested in whether your experience tracks with Court McQuire's experience, which is when he talks to HOAs, when he talks to residents on the street in Boynton, that the performance of the city manager he described as a paramount concern among people in the city. Is that your experience as well?
That has not. I'm up to date, walked over about 1,100 homes. So I have not received much input on Dan. And I think that it's not about having a relationship with the city manager. I think something that's lacking right now is our current mayor and Dan's relationship. There is no communication at all. And I don't think that serves the citizens at all. You need to make sure, even if you're at odds, that you're still being responsive to each other. And that's not happening. After hitting many doors, and I think that this city is divided in our issues. So you have the Eastern Corridor and you have the West. And the East is very concerned. And I live downtown. I live right across the street from City Hall. And I've been here 20 years. We have had a serious increase in crime in the last 6 to 8 months. We've had code enforcement issues that are beyond explainable. I did meet with the current mayor last Friday and then some city staff. Dan was not in that meeting. And I did show the current mayor some of the things that are happening in Courtlandt's district. We both live in the same district. And the mayor was shocked to see that this stuff is happening. So the biggest concern that I have heard is, what are we going to do about the crime? And even noted last night, there's been 19 shootings recently in this area. And we have really great events that are coming to the downtown. We've had an influx of the single income no kids community, and the dual income no kids community have moved into our district. And they deserve to have a city that's providing them the level of service that they moved here for. And right now it's lacking when it comes to crime, code, and safety. Those are the three issues that I hear over and over again. Now, if you're in the western side of the community, you hear the issues of traffic, what's going to happen with the Boynton Beach Mall, but you do not hear the issues of code enforcement. I think that we definitely need to staff more in the areas that have the more problems, because I don't think there's being equal balance in that arena right now. And the East is suffering greatly.
What would explain, and if this is in fact correct, what would explain an increase in crime in the city?
I can't answer that at the moment, but I was told that we are almost fully staffed with police. My question would be, are they going to be designated in the areas that we need? Because when you do go to the Western Corridor, you do see more patrol. It's a fact. I am a real estate broker. I specialize in divorce and probate real estate. My office is on Gateway and Congress. So I often see police patrol there. And I can tell you, living on literally right across the street, I do not see police patrol. I walk to the beach every morning. I walk to the gym on Woolbright and Federal. There's a school zone there. There's cars that are flying by. It's not safe for the kids. There's not enough lighting in this neighborhood. And I think it connects. Crime and code enforcement are definitely connecting in this district. So again, I think that you have a city that's very divided on their issues and their needs, and it needs to be handled equally.
Do you know people in Boynton Beach? I'm not asking you for names, but do you know people personally who have been victims of crime?
I have. 4 years ago, I had a home invasion. And I have had multiple, as I would call them, petty theft robberies, and they've been reported. I've had my lawnmowers stolen. I've had a wheelbarrow stolen. Just it's petty things like that. But you see the same offenders walking in the neighborhood, and it's our community over here that are reporting these same people that are doing this, and then we're able to get them on record, but it seems like they're just kind of let right back go onto the streets for other reasons. And I can't explain that. And I think these are some things that you would never be able to do unless you are mayor and you're able to get a response of why this is happening.
Okay. I've got one more question for you, Rebecca, and then I'll open the floor to my colleagues for questions. Again, Boynton Beach, like a lot of places, Boynton Beach has a council commission manager form of government. An elected part-time city commission and a full-time professional city manager, correct? Both
Correct.
of you? Yeah. So the performance of the city manager, is sort of central to a lot of things. And I want to read, Rebecca, to you. I want to read a sentence from McQuire's questionnaire and ask you if you agree or disagree and why. He said to us, and I quote, "Today, the people's confidence in the city manager has been shaken, and it has sadly spread throughout the city." Close quote. Agree?
I do not agree.
Okay. Tell us your thoughts about that.
Again, just from speaking to countless residents, I've met with multiple neighborhood presidents as well as court. It's not been a concern. I think the biggest concern is that there is no communication right now between the current mayor and the city manager. And that's the citizens, like I said before, do not deserve that. They deserve open communication. I think that the response time from the city has gotten better when there's an inquiry about code or crime or anything of that nature. I just think that the relationship with the mayor and the city manager is damaging within City Hall, but I don't think the residents have a real pulse on that. They're dealing with the everyday issues. They're dealing with the economy issues. They're dealing with the crime issues and the other things that they have on their plate, raising their families.
Okay, and just a brief follow-up by me here. Is Mr. McQuire right in characterizing the tone or atmosphere at city commission meetings as a bit toxic, that there's a lot of animosity?
Yes, I agree. I think the one thing that I've noticed is, which I would like to change, and no matter who's elected, I would like to see the mayor do this, is the mayor needs to be responsible to be looking out for every district. And right now you have some commissioners that really focus on their own district and where they live, and that just cannot be done. The mayor should be able to communicate with all of the electeds and make sure that the mayor's communicating with all of the constituents in each community. And again, when I did meet with the current mayor and showed him some of the photos, and I will happily share them with you if you'd like, he was rather stunned of what was going on in the city. And I think that as a mayor and even other commissioners, I would encourage them to drive the other districts and attend the town meetings in the other districts. So I think that that's important. I've been to some town meetings and I've seen the commissioner for that district there, but the mayor wasn't there, or other electeds. And I think that collectively, even though you're only serving one district, you should care about every district. And that's the disadvantage when you have a commission that doesn't run at large.
Okay. Well, I'd like to return to that topic a little bit later, but I want to open the floor to my colleagues, Pat and Dan, if they have any questions.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this east and west divide that you're referencing. Why would there be more police patrols in the west as opposed to the east, if I understood you correctly?
This is more of a visual thing just from me working in the West and seeing it. And again, I've sold multiple units in Leisureville, and I've been in there multiple times, and I see law enforcement all the time in there. I think that the crime is less over there. And again, as mayor, I think both Court and I would be privy to finding out this data. and understanding it more. I just think that it's a different demographic over there as well. You have more of the over 55 community. You have District 4, which is more of a gated community. So it's obviously going to be more protected over there than it is in the east.
Yeah. So, Mr. McQuire, would you agree with that the East needs more policing?
Yeah, I suppose that's a fair statement. From my studying the crime and seeing what's going on, especially in the last 14 days, with the multiple shootings, I think there were 6 deaths. And a lot of this was in District 2. I think District 2 and parts of 1, really parts of all districts, could use some different programs, and potentially like a crime prevention advisory board might help advise the commission where the hot spots are. But overall, police and fire, I think, are doing a fabulous job. And I see a steady presence throughout our city. But obviously they're going to go to where more of the crime happens. And I think we do need to take a look at District 2 in particular, and it needs some assistance.
Yeah. So you referenced fire services, and this is something that you talked about in your questionnaire. And I believe you stated that the fire department is handling nearly 200 emergency calls annually that the city cannot support. Can you elaborate on that?
All right. So all right. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I've been meeting with not only residents within the city limits, but also West End, outside governed by county, COBRA to be specific. And so I've attended multiple meetings of COBRA to sort of educate myself on our police and fire and emergency services versus county. And I've also met with members on both sides, our FD, their FD, PD, et cetera. And what I've understood is that county has to take over the emergency calls up to almost 200 annually that our city cannot handle. Now, what I would like to do is definitely bring our services up to the standards of the county. You know, the county has blood and plasma on the trucks. We do not. So if you're a senior living out west, you're probably going to be better served to have a county FD in some cases. So all I'm saying is, I think they're doing a great job, but I want to get our services up to county level and beyond. And I want to support the FD in those regards.
And do you have a price tag on that? Do you have any estimate on what it would take to bring them up to county standards or county levels of service?
Well, I do know it's not just, you know, blood and plasma. There's a lot of technology and life-saving machines that help assist you breathe, that help bring you back from a stroke or a heart attack. So, you know, you'd have to look at how many trucks and how many packages, and then the education behind it. If I was to make an uneducated guess, it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Ms. Shelton, would you like to address that issue as well?
I too have met with the COBRA administration, and I'm very familiar with them. And I did have the same discussion with them about services, and it was more of the annexation discussion, which I think that comes into play when it comes to these services. So again, I don't have a number on how much it would cost, and I do support the fire department, but I think that I think the response time is great, and I have no complaints on that end. More of my concern would be on the public safety side, not the fire side, because I have not heard any complaints on the fire side from the public.
Okay. And Michelle, going back to development, you had referenced overdevelopment in the Western Corridor. Can you be specific about what you see as overdevelopment there and why?
I don't believe there's overdevelopment out there. I think that there's adequate development on the west side of Congress, and when I'm meeting with the neighbors out in that district, it's that what's happening to the east side of Congress is very developed, and the west side is not. So the main question is what is going to happen with the mall? That's approximately 130 acres. It has accumulated over $1 million in code enforcement violations in the last couple of years, which from my understanding, that's something new that they have been cracking down on that property. And I'm very happy about that. I think that that should be something that the neighbors out there can participate and we can give them what they want. So you have one side of the road that's developed and producing and has occupancy and great stores. And then you have the other side that's just, it's nothing. And it's very off-putting to the residents out there. And I know there would be a concern about traffic with that development being redone, but it cannot stay the way that it is now with all of the violations and things that are occurring there and the safety issues in that mall as well.
Yeah. Mr. McQuire, would you agree?
Oh, yeah, the mall is definitely a lightning rod issue for the city. And it's for sale right now. And the way things are going, you know, if we're not careful, we're going to have thousands of apartment doors. Apartments yield transient residents and sort of scrapes out the culture and sort of the heritage of our city. So currently, you know, as the mayor, you would be serving on the CRA, which would help me to direct developers in order to get, they've got to give. And that's what I'm going to be focused on. And if you look at the development over the last 12, 16 years in Boynton, it's only apartment buildings. There's no simple fee ownership. There's no singles. There's no coach. There's no towns to speak of proportionately, right? It's a very small percentage. You look at a piece like that, that's the last respite of land, arguably, in Palm Beach County for major development. So we have to really take our time with that. We need destination entertainment for seniors, for families, for children. I serve on the CRA advisory board now. Although that is outside of the district, I'm very adept at working with developers and getting from them what we need. Previously, I served on planning and development. And if you look at our downtown, which is mostly entitled, the two parcels, almost 10 plus acres on the north side and south side of City Hall is almost 1,000 apartments. And they came before my board and offered us 9,000 square feet roughly of retail. And they were also folding in the hotel retail as part of their aggregate. I squeezed out of them an extra 8 or so 1,000 square feet, and it passed on through the CRA and they passed it. This is a type of thing where if you're going to build a bunch of high density apartments, what are you going to give us? There's no setbacks, there's no green spaces, there's no really retail to speak of. What can you do with 8,000 feet and 1,000 apartments? It's really concerning. So I think my ability to direct, sniff a bad deal out, and they're expecting to get pushback, these developers, and they'll get it with me, and I'll get more for the community, and I'll get deliverables in terms of what our community wants, not what I want, what everybody wants. And that's not just transient living. How about a theater, right? Wouldn't that be great to have an enclosed theater where we can see concert venues, we could say off Broadway or plays, attract people, businesses. What about office buildings? As no one's talking about office buildings or hotels. So tourism, well, we don't really have any. And the reason why is, where are they going to stay? So we got to focus on hotels. We got to focus on office buildings. If we want to bring the right economic drivers here, we got to focus on our downtown. We got to focus on attracting businesses. At running marketing and advertising agencies for 30 years, I know how to talk the language of a lot of silos of industry, and I'm going to make it my mission to bring industry and jobs to our city.
Yeah. I want to shift gears for a moment, and this relates to the investigation into the possible drunk driving incident with a girlfriend of a city commissioner, and it was closed without interviewing the officers. And we asked both of y'all, you know, whether you would be open to reopening the investigation in order to interview the law enforcement officers. And different answers, right? Mr. McQuire, you said you would choose to reopen it. So tell me a little bit about why.
I said I would. I believe, I'm not looking at my questions, but I think I said I would consider doing it.
Okay.
You know, there's a balance, right? We have to realize, is the benefit worth it? In that particular case, yeah, it's concerning. The police officers were not interviewed. The camera was turned off when they went to go talk brass tacks. And you know, it is what it is. It does not look good. It's basically another black eye for the city. What happened there? It's anyone's guess, but that's another example of our commission just not looking so great. You know, civil servants need to be held to a higher standard. And I believe that wholeheartedly. As far as that particular incident goes, yeah, I'm concerned about it. I'm surprised. In fact, the acting officer is no longer with the department, and the ones that were there were never questioned in terms of what they had. But what they did say and what was conveyed is that they did smell alcohol on her breath, and the fact that they did not give the test to this woman, you know, if it was me, believe me, or you're going to get the tests. So it is a bit concerning, you know. That's my feeling.
And Ms. Shelton?
You know, I thought about this, and it doesn't really fall into, as a mayor or a commissioner, to have the authority to reopen a case like this. And again, it was investigated with the Commission on Ethics and the Public Corruption Unit. Do I agree with how it went down? I do not. I think, again, I agree with Court. When somebody's drinking and driving, there's lives that can be in jeopardy, and that should have been a thorough investigation. And I don't think that any elected official should be showing up on the scene to a friend or anyone that they know, and to even be there at all, I think was inappropriate as an elected official. But I know it just doesn't fall under our authority to be able to be even to consider opening it back up.
You know, I think there are a couple of issues involved with this, and I'd like both of y'all to address it. But the primary issue is, did the police act appropriately? And it seems to me that would be a city council and, you know, a mayor's issue, or not. Mr. McQuire?
Well, I do know that I am the type of guy that could get rid of problems before they happen, because I like getting on the phone or meeting with people. And that's what I do every day. And what I would probably have done, as soon as that came to light, as soon as I got wind of that, I would have called the chief, and I would have spoken to him and just asked him kind of openly, you know, what's going on here, sort of get the lay of the land, and be able to get the information. You know, this event happened a long time ago. I think it's almost a year ago or so that this actually happened. It only came light in public, you know, of recent. So these are the type of things that, if you look back one election cycle before, members that are on the dais now were wanting the police to go to county. I don't know if you know that. They were actually pushing for it, and they were getting promised, you know, that it would be a good transition. And these are the type of things that kind of inch you closer to that. But my philosophy, and it comes from a business background, is that we take care of our own. We fix our own problems. We don't want to inherit yours. I think that I would work, you know, in whatever capacity, even just an ear to listen with the police to help guide us through these sort of troubling waters. And I think with my leadership, I can do that, avoid these situations.
And Ms. Shelton?
I think that obviously there's some speculation, because our city manager is a former cop, that there's these relationships that might have been protecting a certain commissioner. And again, this is just the word on the street. So I do think that the investigation should have been a little more thorough at that time. If I were to be mayor and this happened, I too would do my due diligence to try to find out everything in this investigation, because I think it does cross a line of being an elected official, and whether that's favoritism to somebody who's committing crime or somebody who's not acting ethical. Ethics is one of the #1 things that the voters deserve. They deserve somebody who's transparent. They deserve transparent government. And I think that there's a lot of missing factors in this. And unfortunately, it just doesn't fall into something that either one of us as candidates can do anything about. But in the future, I think it's something that, whether Court serves or I serve, we need to be available and aware and responsive to the public on these issues too, because even the current mayor is not able to answer a lot of questions. And I'm sure that his relationship with Dan doesn't help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question for Court McQuire. Court, correct me if I'm wrong, you were a city commission candidate in the last cycle, right?
Yes.
And Boynton has 3-year terms, so this would have been in the 2022 election. Why would you say you were not successful, and what did you learn from the experience?
I learned a lot. It was, I learned that, all right, you know, you kind of have to be anointed is basically how it kind of works. And as you can see, you know, I'm not the one with the leading funds here in the race. And I'm coming at this from really a do-gooder kind of thing. I've been volunteering now for almost 8 years on boards. I attend all the commission meetings and CRA meetings for years and years. And I've handled the Kinetic Biennial when we didn't have an arts manager, and maintained it, and had the first event coming out of COVID in the county. So I learned a lot. I learned how to run the data, you know, and what precincts are, and all of these sort of details. But at the end of the day, money does kind of rule the way. But I'm hopeful that endorsements and my voice getting out can sort of teach people about my business style, and that I think we're lacking somebody with business skills. It went to a runoff, the election that you're particularly talking about, and I did not have the endorsement of police and fire. And about 3/4 or halfway through the race, both my opponent that's now currently on the dais did have that endorsement behind the scenes, and they're running doors and they're running data. And you know, that's a difficult thing to come against. If like my mom, I moved here 3 years ago. She's 90, and you know, a handsome hunky fireman knocks on your door and says, "Vote for so and so." You know, that's a tough hill to climb, and that's the hill that I'm dealing with.
Okay.
Is that not currently the hill you're dealing with? I mean,
Yeah. So police and fire gave their endorsements without interviews. Last time, at least they gave the interviews, and this time they gave them without interviews. In fact, they even gave them before qualifying was complete, and others have entered the race during that time.
I would just
Okay.
like to state for the record that I actually ran Marat Hadeen's race against Commissioner Turkin in the last cycle. So I'm not aware of the behind the scenes stuff that Mr. McQuire is talking about for Commissioner Turkin. I do know he ran a grassroots campaign, and that's really why he won. He did go door to door, and my candidate unfortunately became very ill in the middle of that election. And we were trying to, you know, carry her to the finish line, but unfortunately her health just did not allow it. And so she was not able to participate in a lot of things. And I think that did give Commissioner Turkin some traction. He was able to outwork her.
this time around, Ms. Shelton, you have been endorsed by both police and fire. Is that right?
Yes. And I was interviewed by them, and I know that they did meet with David Merker, and I was told that they did meet with you, Mr. McQuire. I was told they did interview you, so I was not aware.
I met with them individually, but they did not have a formal interview process as they did prior with 10 people there. You go to a room at the Benevolent Association in Boynton. That did not happen.
Okay, I was interviewed in a group of people. It wasn't just both of them, so.
Okay, I want to.
You were interviewed. You were interviewed with other candidates, but not Mr.
No, I was
McQuire?
Interviewed with multiple fire and police.
Okay.
Not other. This is the first time I've ever been with another candidate.
I want to go back to Court McQuire for 1 minute to ask him to elaborate on something he said. You know, you've been around the track as a candidate before. You said, quote, "You kind of have to be anointed."
Yeah.
That suggests to me that maybe, in your opinion, Ms. Shelton has been anointed in this race, but anointed by whom?
Well, what I can tell you is Ms. Shelton entered the race at the very end. First, it was Gregory Hartman that was running. And then it was Thomas Turkin who was running. These are not maybes. These are factual statements. I spoke with both of them when they told me they were running, and they knew I was staying in the mayor race and I wasn't going to back out and go to District 3. I was just committed at this point that I'm going to swing for the fences, and this is it, but yeah, that's kind of how it is. As you can see, it does happen. Like, for example, Delray, their mayor did not have the police and fire endorsement and won. So this is where my game is going to come into effect. And when I say anointed, yeah, I mean, like, for example, she has all the developer money, like literally $100,000 maybe.
No, I don't have 100,000, and you have met with all of them too.
Okay, hold on just a second. I appreciate that. Ms. Shelton, I'll give you a full opportunity to
Thank you.
respond, but let Mr. McQuire finish his thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, there are stakeholders in the city, and I'm not going to get into names, inside and outside, that basically it's called inside baseball. And, some people are on the inside baseball game and some aren't.
Okay. Ms. Shelton, I'll give you a chance to respond to what Court has just said.
Thank you. Mr. McQuire, you have met with all of those developers and you did ask them for support, and you would have taken it if they gave it to you. And I know this from doing campaigns for 20 years. Campaigns are expensive, and I can't control the voter data. I have to have my community outreach. But when you say anointed, I find that very offensive, because I've lived in this county for 30 years and I've lived in Boynton for 20. And I have volunteered for the Children's Museum. I've been on that board. I sit on the Senior Advisory Board. I did not get in late in the game. I got in early September. So I don't think that was late when qualifying was in December. I have been a volunteer for AVDA for over 15 years. So I've been actively entrenched in this community and in this county on various levels. And I think that I've earned the support. And I also have endorsements by over 60 community leaders and neighbors in this city. Do I have outside endorsements too? I do. I have Ann Gannon is my supporter, and former Sharon Bach is my supporter. Former Jeff Perlman of Delray, who I would look to for advice on a lot of the historic and redevelopment challenges that we're facing here. So I don't think it's a shame that I have been here this long and made the connections, but I don't think by any means I'm just a chosen one. I think that I've earned the support that I have.
I do want to ask a brief follow-up question of you, Ms. Shelton, about fundraising, and you do have a big fundraising advantage in this race, not only from, excuse me, folks in the real estate community, which is common in most cities in South Florida, but in addition to Ann Gannon, I see some very familiar names among your contributors. Dave Arenberg, a former state attorney.
That's not Dave Arenberg.
Oh, that's the other Dave Arenberg?
So that's an attorney. Yes.
Okay.
The other Palm Beach County attorney, Dave Arenberg.
David Arenberg. So he's David Arenberg.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
He's a Boynton Beach resident.
This is not the first time this has happened in a race.
Yes. So and David Arenberg lives in near you, Mr. McQuire. He's in that area. He's in the Chapel Hill area.
Thanks for that clarification. Other names among your contributors, Eric Johnson.
Yes.
Eric Johnson is somebody I know well. Eric Johnson's a longtime campaign consultant, lives in Wilton Manors. Among many other people, he's been doing a lot of political consulting for people like Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Neil Schiller.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Schiller is a prominent land use attorney in both Palm Beach and Broward counties. The Carney legal firm, is that the law firm of Mayor Tom Carney of Delray Beach?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Tell us, and Ann, you mentioned Ann Gannon previously, I would say it's fair to say, a popular and multiple times elected as a legislator and as the tax collector in Palm Beach County. Why are these folks interested in supporting you in Boynton Beach?
I think that they've seen me. When I was doing campaigns, I was passionate about grassroots mobilization. So I would volunteer or sometimes be hired. I've never been hired on the Ann Gannon campaign, but I did volunteer on her campaign every single time. So I noticed in about 2015, and that's when I started transitioning out of being a political consultant, that the day of the volunteer was dead. Grassroots mobilization was starting to die off, and you were starting to get into the time of the paid volunteer. I don't agree with that. I'm still a real volunteer to get out there. So I think that a lot of my support appreciates that I came in very early at a young age, and I've been through the transitions of campaigning. I've been through the transitions of the development of our cities, and I've worked all over the county. So I've established those relationships, and I'm proud of the relationships that I've had, and I'm proud of the campaign experience. And And again, I've known Neil Schiller for over 20 years before he was, is what he is now. And Eric Johnson, I was actually shocked by that contribution because I have only worked with Eric probably once, about 10 years ago, maybe. So when I did get that contribution, I called him and thanked him, and he was very supportive, and he did offer to help with my campaign, but I'm really running this locally. But again, I'm not ashamed of the support that I have.
Just a second, yeah, real quick. What do contributors to your campaign, what do they get in return for their money?
They get a conversation with me, but it doesn't mean that by any means they're going to get everything that they want if it comes before the commission. It doesn't work that way with me.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, real quick. This is probably esoteric to a lot of voters, but it's related to your campaign financing, and it also was true in the previous race that we interviewed in this morning in District 3. So I wanted to ask you about it. Ordinarily, when I said you have the support of police and fire, it's because I could look at your campaign financing and see the PBA gave to you, and so on and so on. Usually, the firefighters give through their union. It'll say right on there, firefighters. It's pretty black and white. In District 3 and in your campaign, there is a donation from Floridians for Public Safety, which is a Tallahassee political action committee run by a lobbyist named Dave Ramba. I can't tell for certain that it's firefighter money coming to you because he has, 20 or however many different committees, and money moves among all of them. It's hard to track, but I do know that the Boynton firefighters gave $10,000 to this PAC, and then $1,000 was dispersed to you, and $1,000 was dispersed to one of the people in the District 3 race. Do you know why the Boynton firefighters are like covering their tracks and donating to candidates? That's what it appears to be on paper.
I do not know, and I would love to ask that to them probably after this interview. I've been open about their endorsement, so but that is where I did receive the check from.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they would do that. But okay, I just wanted to know.
It's very possible that they had leftover PAC money from somewhere else, but I can't answer for that. But just being in politics for so long, we know these PACs have money, and like you said, they transfer from one political consultant to another and one entity to another. So yeah, that's the game of the PAC. Yeah.
I just, like I said, usually you can see there's the police, the PBA, there's the firefighters union, and it's usually pretty black and white, but it wasn't in this case in both point races. So I wanted to ask about that. Steve, Pat, if either of you have questions, go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Shelton, what's the current size of the city budget in Boynton Beach, and how many city employees are there?
The budget right now is $319 million. We have, I believe, 960, where in Delray I know there's 1,200 employees. So we're a constituent base of a little over 80,000 right now. So I do believe, like when we go back to what we were talking about earlier, when it comes to code enforcement and things, I do believe that we do need some additional employees in the city to be able to sustain the services.
Mr. McQuire, do you agree with that the city may be short-staffed for the size of the population?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Geographically, we're bigger. By population, we're bigger, and we are understaffed, I think, in both regards, yes.
So you've got more people than Delray Beach, but fewer city employees than Delray Beach. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Dan, do you have your hand up?
Well, earlier, Mr. McQuire, you said you wanted to look at ways to cut from the budget, and put a panel in to give advice and everything. And now you're saying the city may be understaffed, which is of course going to mean a lot more budget to hire people. How do you square that circle?
Well, that's exactly why I would have the committee established, and I've tried to staff this with people that are financially oriented and go through the actual budget. The budget isn't completely transparent. If you look at what's published, and it's published to the public before they present it like days ahead of time, it's not like zero-based budgeting where you can go down to the actual pencil that has been purchased. That's one thing that I'm going to shed light on immediately. I want that type of budgeting within our city so we could see where everything's going. I mean, if you look at our budget from last year, it's like $289 million, and the general ledger, of which is a big portion of that, almost 70% of that is police and fire. So it does constitute a huge amount of our budget. But there's other ways to look at that. Like right now we're opening up a new fire intercoastal and ocean going center, which is currently county is handling that, and Coast Guard. That's something that is a huge ticket item. That's something, maybe that could be looked at, right? I mean, there's something, not necessarily cutting staff member, but the equipment associated with that. There is a fire assessment fee. A lot of community members really don't like it. It's pushing $200 now, and it raises over $8 million a year. And this is basically just an extra tax that all of our citizens have to pay. And it comes in a bill to them annually. This was supposed to be sunset years and years ago. It was a temporary stopgap fix. But as far as the budget, once you get the transparent budget in front of me, I would go through it. There's a couple things I can just I could tell you right now from running a lot of businesses, there's a lot of recurring revenue models that are associated with software that I know the city's not using, because I've been interviewing and meeting with people. And that's a low-hanging fruit, and that makes a big difference at the end of a month when you cut a bunch of recurring revenue models that are just not delivering to the community.
Mr. McQuire, if you're elected mayor on March 11th or in the runoff election, what are you going to do about that fire assessment fee?
I'm getting rid of it. Nobody wants it. It's not fair. And it's basically, it's a slush fund. So for FD, I mean, it is what it is. And I'm going to do everything in my power to get rid of that.
Pardon the interruption. If it's almost $200 a year, I guess that would be per homeowner. How much money does that generate in a year for Boynton Beach?
It's over 8 million. It's 8 and change.
Ms. Shelton, do you agree that that fire assessment has to go?
I do agree. And the only thing, when I asked about the numbers, I was told that the public safety was 50% of the budget. So I'm not sure if that's right, or the 70%. So I guess that, again, that's something that you don't know until
it's 64% of the general budget.
Yeah, and I was told from the city it's 50. So, and 64 is insane. So I think that the one thing I agree with Mr. McQuire on is the only way is to move to a zero-based budgeting, because that is the only way to see where you can start trimming things down.
Okay.
And maybe shifting some money into some of the more areas that need the help most, and balancing it out a little bit.
We're running out of time, and I lost one little nuance of that, Court. 64% of what?
So the budget, the general budget was 289 from last year, and then they break it down into segments. And the second segment, is the biggest one. And of the second segment, I'm not looking at it right now, but it constitutes 64%. But what's confusing about the budget, they have a separate item that's not in the same budget item, which is fleet. Well, also fleet is automobiles and equipment for FD and PD and emergency services. So if you really look at the number, it's higher than what is shown, and that's why zero-based budgeting is what we need.
And Court, if you're elected, would you take away a lot of these take-home cars from police officers?
Yeah, coming from the private sector, I mean, there's a lot of things that, listen, I love our government employees and everything, but, coming from the private sector, you don't get an award for getting up and going to work, and we're throwing around a lot of accolades and patting a lot of people on the back. I want to just focus on doing good work and, not just getting to work. That's my focus.
Okay, that didn't sound like a yes or a no to me. So maybe I'm.
Can you ask it again?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm asking, what are you going to do if you're elected mayor about the fact that you said early on in this interview that too many city employees, I took it to mean public safety employees, too many people have take-home cars, and it's a waste of money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Not only that, the gas associated with that, I would limit that to the absolute individuals that need it. Police would probably be definitely one of them, but certainly staff, I would take a hard look at that. In the private sector, nobody's throwing out free cars unless you're the CEO or president. So I would definitely take a red pen to that line item for sure, and it would run deep.
Ms. Shelton, do you agree that too many people have take-home cars?
I do agree. And I think the only part of that I may support is I know sometimes when there is a a law enforcement officer that lives in the city and his car, he or she's car is there all night, it might deter some crime when you see a police officer's car in a community. But I don't think it needs to be as excessive as it is. If you're not a police person and it's not deterring a crime, using it to deter crime, I don't see a point in it.
And am I right in assuming, and the residents would be interested in knowing the answer to this, I'm going to go back to you, Court McQuire, that some of these people who have take-home cars that say Boynton Beach on the side, these folks live in Coral Springs,
Oh, yeah.
they live in Boca Raton, right?
That's absolutely right. And not all of them have logos on them. They're also just automobiles, SUVs. They just purchased a whole fleet of them this past year.
Okay. I want to ask Rebecca Shelton one last quick question, and we're up against the top of the hour. So, and I'll let Mr. McQuire speak briefly as well. I heard Court McQuire, and you did too, Ms. Shelton, talk about that you have to be on the inside to run for office, and that he's sort of up against that, and you have to be anointed. Is there, Ms. Shelton, is there an insider sort of culture? I think a synonym for this would be, and sorry, it's not gender neutral, but I think what we're talking about is a good old boy environment in local politics that sort of cherry picks who's going to run for office in the next election. Does that exist in Boynton Beach?
I think that in the political side in Boynton, it has been a good old boy system since there has not been a woman mayor in 32 years. That is a fact. So I think that's my thought on that at the moment. But I don't think that it's insider, because we can look back and say Thomas Turkin knew 0 people. He did it without the establishment and won. So I don't think you definitely need to be anointed. He gained the traction early on when all of the establishment was with Marat Hadin for the first part till the runoff. We've seen a lot of underdogs come and win. So
Well, that's not true.
Hold on just one second.
Yeah.
I just want to let Michelle.
And that goes back to me being in campaign so long, as I have often worked for candidates that did not have the establishment and they won. And I think it's how much you can relate to the citizens, that you're a responsive elected official, that you have some empathy. Response time is essential when you're running for office and when you are in office. You can't just get there and say, okay, I'm done with my constituent base. And a lot of electeds do that. And it goes back to running in districts. They only care about their district, and they only focus and give that district what they want for reelection. And that's not something that the mayor should do and cannot do, because we run at large. So I think only time will tell. You know, I don't plan on ever running for any other office. I love this city. I've been here 20 years. And when people ask me, why are you running? And I said, I'm running now because we obviously know how the housing market is, and I am a broker, and I understand that it's very expensive to move, and I love my home and I love living in the East. But if we do not get this crime and code enforcement under control, there's a lot of us that are going to have to leave.
All right. Mr. McQuire, I'm going to let you comment on what you just heard from your opponent there briefly.
Well, do you want me to answer that same question?
I do, yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just getting back to that particular race, I mean, I was running with Turkin, and he actually told me, you know, that he's getting help. And I saw them holding his signs on intersections. And when I say they, I mean police and fire, that sort of thing. So even it was apparently Marat, they switched teams halfway through the race. So that's a fact. That's not even.
Let me ask a quick follow-up, and I pardon my interruption, and this is my interpretation. The fact that police and fire were helping your opponent, you make that sound somehow nefarious, that's sort of somehow a little bit underhanded. What point are you trying to make here?
Well, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think that the city manager, police and fire should really stay out of the political arena when it comes to electing somebody from the community to serve on the commission. And that's not what's happening here. And, you know, it is what it is. I am running a very good race. I do have endorsements, and I am raising money, and I am knocking doors. I'm doing everything I should be doing. And, you know, of course, this is just part of the process. And like you said early on, you know, you must have learned a lot. And yes, I learned that this would be the gauntlet I would run, and I was prepared to do it, and I still am, and I'm going to finish.
Okay. Well, I got to say this. This is only the second candidate panel we've done in these municipal cycle, and I hope all of them are as spirited and as good as this one. We really appreciate your candor, your familiarity with the issues, and best of luck to both of you.